What's up, guys, and welcome to One Take. We are 2 hours away from the DEVS finale, and that's not the season finale, that is the finale. There's not going to be a season 2. This is a limited series, so tonight is a big night. This is our pregame show. We're going to be counting down because, Adam, I always say that the anticipation is always better than the actual thing you're waiting for, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
And it's a good segue to say I'm Gil. This is my brother Adam.
Hello.
And we're talking to my tech guy / brother Alun.
Yo.
And that's what this next 2 hours is all about. It's all about anticipation. What we're going to do is look back at the last 7 episodes of DEVS. We're going to try, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but try to recap the season up until now so we're all fresh. We all remember the important bits as we go into the finale tonight, which drops at 12:01 a.m. EDT. Actually, Alun, why don't you throw up the countdown? We're going to have a...
You know when you go to like Disney World or something and you're the whole time you're like, I want to go on Space Mountain. I can't wait for Space Mountain. And then you go on it and it's over just like that.
That's
and you're
right.
like, I should have appreciated it more. This is how we really milk and enjoy the finale.
People usually don't enjoy waiting in line at Disney World.
This is not. Don't compare this to a line. This is like, you know, when you're waiting in line and you have for the Back to the Future ride and you have the thing that's on loop and it's like, come on, Marty, we gotta go. You know, it's like that. That's what we are. We're the entertainment on the TV.
All right, there you go. So enough metaphors.
Yeah.
Let's get into the actual thing. So like I said, what we're going to do tonight is recap the season, the first 7 episodes. We don't have to have a ton of structure, though, so we can jump around, whatever people want to bring up in the chat. We can talk about whatever you all want to talk about. But in the course of the recap, there will be plenty of theories, plenty of predictions. And then at 12:01 a.m., once the episode drops, we're all going to get offline, put our laptops, watch the finale, give it the attention it deserves. Then around 1:15 or 1:30, we'll get back online for our immediate reactions to the episode. And then, of course, in the next day or two, we'll do the full deep dive and analysis, the scene-by-scene breakdown like we like to do. And before we jump into it, quick reminder, if you haven't done it already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. Now, I should say, Adam, you have not been watching DEVS.
I have not.
Until, what, about 12 hours ago?
That's right. Today was quite a day. This is... I haven't binged watched this much of something since season 1 of Game of Thrones.
Wow, so that's years ago.
Yeah.
And before you watched DEVS, how much of Alex Garland's work have you seen? Did you see Ex Machina?
Yes.
Annihilation?
No.
What'd you think of Ex Machina?
Loved it.
Have you seen Dread 3D?
No, but I know that was big for our family. I remember a lot of discussion about it in our group text.
We were big fans of it. How about, okay, here's one I know you've seen, 28 Days Later.
Oh, yeah.
So he wrote that movie. He didn't actually direct it. Ex Machina was the first one he wrote and directed.
Okay.
But yeah, very
like
solid filmmaker. This was his first foray into television. And like a lot of other great filmmakers, he wasn't just the showrunner. Like Vince Gilligan for Breaking Bad, he's the showrunner, but he didn't write every episode. Alex Garland wrote and directed all 8 episodes.
And that, I think, at least for me, and it might be a side effect of having watched it all straight through earlier today, it felt very consistent in quality. It wasn't like most TV shows where even if it's a very good show, some episodes are off or just have a different vibe. It felt continuous, which is kind of one of the cool things about TV in this day and age is if you do it right, it's basically like a very long movie.
Right, exactly. And a recent example of that would be Twin Peaks, the reboot of that, where it literally was written as one giant script and then just divvied up into 18 episodes. And this felt kind of similar. Alun, by the way, I don't know if you're watching the chat, but there's a lot of discussion about your name. People are fascinated by the spelling of your name. He has a lot of trouble with it in real life. You know, it's pronounced Alun. He gets a lot of Alons.
Alan, Alon,
Alone.
Alone, Alien, Aladdin.
I would just adopt Elon. I feel like it's just like inviting the universe to give you
Well,
money
as
if you do that.
HNGN said, your brother's name is Elon. I corrected him, and he said, 1 E away from being worth 40 billion.
Working on it.
He's going to get there one day. Alun is an Elon Musk or a Forrest.
I was going to say Forrest.
Character.
Listen, if everyone in this chat subscribes, we could be on our way there.
It's true. I think we already are.
All right. So, one thing you said that's interesting is you said, I was curious actually how you were going to feel about the series watching it all in one day, because you said it felt very consistent. For me, watching it week to week, I actually felt not a shift in quality necessarily, but a shift in tone.
Mm-hmm.
To me, at the beginning, it felt like it was going to be a little bit of a sci-fi thriller, political intrigue. It was Lily going to work with the Russians. And then towards the end of the season, or towards the end of the series, it kind of shifted more into a feeling, the same feeling I got with 2001: A Space Odyssey, a very slow-paced, philosophical, contemplative sci-fi.
So I think that's what I love about it so far is the pace slows down. My main, and you kind of know what I'm about to say, which is my main complaint about a lot of sci-fi these days is that it's not even really sci-fi. Like I've never been a huge Star Trek person, but I've seen some of the newer movies, and they really just felt like an action movie that happens to take place in the future.
Right.
Whereas this, it has some thriller elements. You kind of have the villain who's a bit of a goon and he's kind of violent, but you also have some really heady stuff. Some really, I was a philosophy major in college, and I've read a lot of popular physics books.
Right.
And so at least for someone who's to an untrained mind, it made me think a lot. And it's made me think more and more as the series progressed, which was cool.
Right. I love that we have a series that got us talking about the many worlds theory, the Everett interpretation, the Bootstrap Paradox, all these concepts that I love to talk about, I love to think about, and people don't, it's not really part of mainstream. And I love that there's something like this, not an art house movie, but something like this on television. I think this is one of the great things about streaming services, because that is a platform where you can take someone like Alex Garland and give him a platform to tell amazing stories. And he actually said in an interview recently that this show, when he was producing this, he had the least resistance he's ever had making a movie or a TV show. With Ex Machina, Dread, Annihilation, he faced all kinds of issues. The studio execs didn't know what to do with it. Here, he had total creative freedom. So I think we've seen a trend where a lot of really talented people are going to television, and I think this series is a great example of why they do that. Rustamir in the chat says Garland is shaping up to be the true current hard sci-fi master, and 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I really can't think of anything else that in recent memory that lives up to this level of sci-fi besides. What was the movie that was all about language and, aliens?
Arrival.
Yeah, Arrival.
Yeah. Oh, Denis Villeneuve. He's the other great sci-fi guy right now, and he's producing, or he's creating Dune, 2-part sci-fi epic.
Right. So now Dune has the movie and book are both so long that I wasn't sure my attention span could handle it, but I'm very excited about the prospect of watching a new Dune movie.
Right, exactly. Same for me. I didn't read the book, didn't see the original movie, but loved Denis Villeneuve. He did Blade Runner 2049, and I loved that movie. But anyway, people are not here to talk about Star Trek or some of these other sci-fi properties. We're here to talk about devs. So it's 10:10. Oh, well, let's throw that countdown clock back up again.
Yeah.
I love the countdown because it reminds you of the anticipation. It gets you excited. It gets you hyped. And that's the goal tonight. I want to get to peak hype, and then we go to Hulu and we watch the episode. We're not sponsored by Hulu.
No.
But I'm hoping by the end of the night we will be.
Yeah. We're expecting some phone calls.
Anyway, so let's go episode by episode. We're going to focus on just the highlights of each episode. I love the fact that you just watched them today, so your memory is going to be fresh. So if I miss a detail, you'll jump in and remind me. And in the course of recapping the episodes, we'll get into all the theories. We'll connect the dots as much as we can. And we'll make a bunch of predictions and see if we can get anything right for tonight's final episode.
I'm going to try to predict the many predictions interpretation. I'm going to predict every possible thing that I can so that maybe one of them will turn out to be right.
Well, and if you're wrong, then in another reality, what you predicted is what happened tonight. Anyway, so let's start with episode 1. We open with a montage where they first use some of that kind of religious-esque choir music, which was a motif that came up throughout the series, and one of the things that I thought worked really well. It's not a religious show, but the things they're dealing with they speak to the nature of reality.
I would say they're religious in nature in the sense that a lot of what they're doing requires a certain kind of faith, especially what Forrest is doing, because he doesn't have proof. In fact, he has the opposite of proof that the model of reality he's working with is true. He's seeing every indication that it's actually the Everett interpretation, but he's sticking with the something Bohm interpretation.
Right.
And that's something he's doing on faith in some ways for emotional reasons. And I'm really getting ahead here, but
no, it's fine.
But I would
Let's
say
jump around.
it's all about looking back into humanity's history, investigating these spiritual and moral questions. It's all very religious in nature.
Mm-hmm. It deals with the same concepts and the ideas of religion, but from a scientific angle. And similar to religion, where people will believe in it so much they'll literally give up their life for it. Well, we saw exactly that in the last episode with Lyndon.
Right. And if anyone wants to know more about the background of that scene, just Google quantum immortality. That's an idea that's been around for a couple decades.
You throw the word quantum in front of something and it immediately becomes so much more interesting.
Quantum one take.
There you go. So that opening montage is the first time we get that religious vibe, and that's from that first moment I was on board. It just felt like we were about to see something really important.
You know, and even the place where where DEVS is located looks like a temple.
Yes, it does. It looks very religious. That table that had the dead rat in the middle where they do the experiments.
It's like sacrifice or something.
And it looks like it's got symbols on it and everything.
Plus the whole idea of self-immolation, which is they could have faked Sergei's death in any way, right? Now, fire makes sense because it covers up all the evidence, but also that historically most of the time that anyone has self-immolated, it's been for religious reasons.
That's right. So we are introduced very quickly to Lily and Sergei. They take a shuttle to the beautiful Amaya campus, the sort of thing you see for a Silicon Valley, super successful company. And when they arrive there, you see that giant Amaya statue. Yeah. And within 2 or 3 episodes, we learn that this is basically Forrest's tribute to his daughter. Now, do you think he realizes how creepy that statue is, or does he just look at it as a loving tribute?
I could see it. I could see him holding both ideas in his mind, because it seems that at least the stereotype of the Silicon Valley entrepreneur is that they have sort of a jaded view of the world and see themselves not necessarily as in charge of everything, but they've kind of seen how the sausage is made.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. And actually, a few things I want to jump to in the chat here. Rustamir says 2001 obelisks. So that's the first thing you thought, right? When you see those gold posts.
Yeah. So Gil wanted to watch me watch the first couple minutes of the show, and as soon as I saw that, I said monoliths.
That's right. And then Uri Ferreira says, I think Forrest is dark gray in terms of morality. He should just go to therapy instead of trying to reach quantum singularity.
You have no idea how many times I thought the same thing.
He's a little bit upset. Well, okay, to be fair, he's very upset. He went through something very troubling, so he figures he's going to rip apart the very nature of reality.
I mean, that's kind of respectable, just to care about something that much.
Yeah, you know what? If we all had a little bit of what Forrest has in us, maybe don't go that far with it, you could accomplish quite a lot.
And to that extent, the idea of going too far, that statue of his daughter, it did have the vibe of like, what have I done? That's almost what it looked like to me.
That's true. She has her hands out like this. And people are testing her quantum theory out. Miss Cyber Vamp says quantum carrots. That sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm not a big carrot guy. Get me some quantum carrots, though. Uri says quantum cereal. So I think we've hit on something pretty good here.
I bet quantum cereal, for some reason, it sounds carbonated.
Pop Rocks.
And
there you go.
Oh, yeah. And let's not, we can jump around a little bit. A few people have just brought up Lyndon. Is Lyndon dead? And one thing they point to is that in the opening montage of episode 7, you see Lyndon safely sitting at the bottom of the dam. Did you pick up on that when you watched the episode?
No, I didn't.
I've already blown your mind once, and it won't be the last time tonight.
Now I remember it, but that's a good point.
So what do you think that means? Now, I think I noticed it the first time I watched, but I just sort of glossed over, and I chalked it up to that could have been Lyndon sitting at the bottom of the dam yesterday, because he seemed like he had a pretty particular location in mind when he met with Katie. Oh, we can go meet at the dam. So I could easily picture him having sat at the dam. I'm going to meet with Katie here. work up the courage. What am I going to say exactly? So it could easily have been that.
Yeah, I think that's got to be intentionally ambiguous at this point.
I think you're right, because in the opening montages, they have shown you quick flashes of events that are going to take place later in the episode. So it's very possible that him sitting down there is an alternate reality where he survived. But even that feels weird to me. So he's standing at the top of the dam, he survives, and then what? He took a walk down to the bottom to sit there and I guess contemplate life. It's possible.
Maybe just think, wow, it's true.
Yeah.
But I have a few different ideas about this, and I don't want to jump fully into what my basic thesis on the show is, but I think there's a chance he truly is dead and that actually the many worlds interpretation, at least in the show, is wrong. And that might explain why at a certain point they're simply static. Because what that would suggest is that actually maybe there is something that's truly unpredictable that's going to happen. Some kind of true sense of a free choice that gets made or something non-deterministic. And in that sense, you would no longer have this whole many worlds outcome because it's not generating a bunch of different possibilities. It's basically saying after this, we don't know what happens, right?
Right. There's some branching point where the rules of cause and effect break down, which is actually exactly the language that Katie uses.
Right.
She tells Lily that cause and effect somehow breaks down, and Katie looks pretty unsettled by that. Now, one question I've had, and I've debated a bit in the YouTube comments, is are the theories of determinism and many worlds at odds with each other, or could they coexist? Because I see them as coexisting. I mean, the theory of determinism really just says every effect has a cause, and therefore, if you had complete information, you could predict with absolute certainty. If there are many worlds, within any individual world, you should be able to trace cause and effect back and back and back, and you get to one point, I guess, where one reality and another just happen to have a different cause.
Right.
And maybe you could trace it all the way back to the start of the universe, the Big Bang. One particle went this way instead of this way, and therefore in this reality, Lyndon fell, and in this one, he didn't fall.
Yeah, I think basically the thesis of this show with the idea of many worlds, I think you can, in philosophy, there's a concept called compatibilism, which basically means determinism and probability are compatible. And if you think about it this way, let's say you have a coin flip and we know it's 50-50, and we know it's a true random process. We know it isn't, but let's just pretend it is. Well, you can still predict with certainty that in the long run, it's going to be half of the time heads, half of the time tails. In that sense, it's still deterministic, just not in the classical sense.
That's interesting. And in the chat, a couple of people are talking about the similarities between DEVS and Westworld this season. And we've been talking about that a bunch. It's pretty insane how similar these shows are in terms of the themes they're exploring. And I have to think a bit about what that says about humanity right now. Why are these themes that we are all so interested in that it seems to have seeped into a couple different spots in pop culture? I mean, they're so similar down to even using virtually identical metaphors for determinism. In DEVS, they talk about the tram lines. And in Westworld, last episode, they talked about being on the tracks, on the train tracks. So pretty interesting stuff. And as a time check, we're 20 minutes in, and we're about 1.5 scenes in episode 1.
All right, let's pick up the pace.
Yeah. No, it's no problem.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the fun of this is we'll see how far we can get. But let's jump around and just theorize and predict for tonight. So Sergei meets with Forrest, and they do that really cool model where they basically predict the movements of a nematode.
That was when the show really started to, I mean, it was early on, but that was the first thing that made me think, okay, this is cool. I like where this is going.
And one detail I picked up on in my rewatch today when I was kind of jumping around episodes is that Forrest apologizes for being late to that meeting. He says that there was a New York Times article written, probably by a competitor, saying that Amaya might need government oversight. And I think that's interesting because it seems that that's an idea that's brought up in the show a couple of times, but it's not super developed. A couple episodes later, we have that senator show up, and Forrest tells her, yeah, we use the DEVS to predict the weather and stuff like that. So do you think there's more to this idea with the government getting involved? Could it come back in the final episode? Or is that really just an idea that Alex Garland wanted to throw into the mix, just in the vein of giving us more to talk about?
I think it's actually, Alon, you look like you want to say something.
I hope it's not coming back. I didn't think it was very interesting.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I found it interesting in the sense that you can't really talk about the super powerful modern computer tech companies, everything like that. You can't talk about that without at least reminding people of this tension that's currently there between our freedoms, our privacy, and their money, their power, right? And the services they provide us. So I think people might have thought that the show was glossing over that stuff if it didn't cover it. That might be part of it. It also, this show does tend to tie up a lot of loose ends. Like you got the homeless guy, for example, who's you
Pete.
knew he was going to come back somehow in a big way. So I would be surprised if it did not come back in some capacity in the finale.
Right. And actually, speaking of Pete, so from episode 1, plenty of people were theorizing Pete is a Russian agent. He's a spy. There's something to him. And I kept telling people, that's ridiculous. He's not going to be a spy. I mean, clearly he's very protective of Lily, and I'm sure in some way he's going to come to the rescue at the end of the season. But it turns out I was wrong. He was a Russian agent. What was your thinking on that? As you went through the series, did you know it was going to go this way? What was your reaction at that reveal?
I knew he was going to do something important. I knew he was going to save someone's life, especially because he said, I got your back.
Right.
They intentionally made him kind of likable. They kept bringing attention to him in some way. So, and also the other thing is I started to notice this parallel between him and Kenton because they're always both smoking.
That's right.
So I started to get a feeling something's going to happen between the two of them.
Right. And Pete in episode 4, I think, says to Kenton, "I'm not afraid of you, man." And Kenton says, "I can see that. I'm just trying to figure out why."
Yeah. I liked that. What's funny is at the beginning, I kind of liked Kenton. Did you like him at all?
I probably episode 1, yes, I liked him. I just liked his no BS attitude. Probably the first 2 or 3 episodes I liked him. And then somewhere around the halfway mark, I started to disconnect with him. Maybe when he went to, when he followed Anton, Sergei's Russian boss, into the garage, I was kind of like, don't bring nothing to a knife fight. What did he think was going to happen? And then when they fought, I kind of thought to myself, like, I'm not really seeing really great fighting skills there. It kind of seems like two people who don't know what they're doing rolling around in a parking garage.
It almost looked like when two dogs on leashes kind of walk past each other and just start like,
Right. So Sergei shows that they can predict with 100% accuracy the movement of a nematode 30 seconds into the future, then it falls apart. When Forrest asks him why that happens, Sergei postulates it could be many worlds. Maybe we are accurate, but we're predicting the nematode's movements in another reality. That's the first time we see Forrest's distaste for the many worlds theory. And it's unclear to me, does he believe that the many worlds theory is false? Or is his attitude, there may be many worlds, but I'm only interested in this one?
I don't know that he definitely thinks it's false, because if he did, he'd probably have he'd probably get into more conflict with Katie, because she seems to be embracing it toward the end to an extent. I think what his point is, and I think it's valid, is there's no reason, if it's true and we really can't predict what's happening in this world, there's basically no point to what we're doing. So we have to just assume that there's only this world and that we're trying to work within it.
Right.
I feel like Forrest just thinks for his purposes, it's a waste of time to explore that because it has nothing to do with his end goal. Whether or not he believes it's true is irrelevant.
Right. Exactly. Actually, somebody in the comments on last week's video asked, how come they haven't used the DEVS device to look for alien life?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that earlier today, yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I would do with it, but I think Forrest, he's very singularly focused. So he doesn't care about other worlds. He cares only about, I guess that's a great question, actually, Adam. You just watched the first 7 episodes. How would you describe Forrest's goal to the extent we understand it?
I think he's hell-bent on, I think this is his, this is a really common theme in so many shows that we watch, which is inability to grieve or cope properly with some kind of traumatic loss. And I really think that all of this is almost like, first of all, it's like a temple to the daughter that he lost. It's an attempt to alleviate his own guilt. It's an attempt just to relive some of the moments he had with her.
And when you say relieve himself of guilt, basically prove the world is deterministic. Even if there are many worlds, I am in this one. I am on this world's tram lines. I could not have done anything to prevent the death of my daughter and wife, by the way. He just generally doesn't get mentioned for some reason.
And you can see that he practices what he preaches to a large extent, because throughout most of the series, he's actually very passive. Kenton's the one going around doing all the dirty work. Even when he's like, I kind of like those two. They're really bold. They're brave. They're smart.
Kids.
Jamie's a smart kid.
That's right.
They're playing Frisbee together. And after all that, he knows Kenton is still out there, presumably he's going to try to kill them, and he just doesn't do anything.
Right.
Because he already has seen the future. He knows what's going to happen. He's become totally passive. I think he wants to not feel responsible for his daughters and maybe to a lesser extent his wife's death, but also I think his way of coping is to basically just become totally inactive.
In a way, the way he didn't blame Sergei for what he did because of the tram lines, it kind of makes you, in a way, not blame Forrest for anything, because he feels he's on the same tram lines.
Yeah. Well, if you agree with their theory of determinism, you can't really blame anybody for anything. Or, well, the whole concept of blame just doesn't mean a whole lot. All you can do is explain the cause. Here's why what happened. Though then if I blame you, well, the cause of me blaming you is the thing that you just did. So, I mean, you could go crazy thinking about all this.
And just one thing to focus on, too, in the sense that Forrest is very passive, Katie is not passive. Now she's very stone-faced and looks like pretty focused just on the science. But if you look at it, at every corner, she's manipulating and controlling him. I don't even know if she's doing it on purpose or if she's kind of like almost become a religious follower of these predictions, and it just believes they're going to come to pass, and she doesn't mind facilitating it or playing along. And this is a point that Kyrie made in the chat, which is exactly that. Katie, though, is manipulating much of these events in a low-key way. Maybe she has some kind of secret motive that we're going to find out.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that. Somebody actually a couple of hours ago commented on our latest YouTube video bringing up the Bootstrap Theory, or the Bootstrap Paradox. And the basic idea of the Bootstrap Paradox is, let's say you, Adam, go back in time and meet Albert Einstein before he came up with the theory of relativity. And then you explain the theory of relativity to him. Well, then Einstein takes the idea you just give him, he kind of develops it, expands on it, and then in the present day, where did you get the theory of relativity from? Well, you learned it from Einstein. Where did Einstein learn it from? He learned it from you, from the future. So the idea of the theory of relativity seems to have materialized from nowhere.
And that's actually what was so cool about that scene where they started looking at the future just a second in advance.
Right.
So they would see their own reactions to what was happening before they reacted.
Yeah.
And I was craving to watch one of them do something, watch one of them see something happen and just not do it,
Right.
And it didn't happen.
Yeah, and specifically the reason I was bringing up the Bootstrap Paradox is because that's something which can apply to an object, it can apply to an idea. In that example, the idea was Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Where it comes into play with Katie, at least in one example, is when she goes to the dam with Lyndon. Where did the idea for Lyndon to get over that rail, lift up his hands, where did that idea come from? Well, it came from Katie, but where did Katie get the idea from? She saw it in the future. So she got the idea from the future, but where did the future Katie get it from?
It's like, for all we know, this machine has its own motivations and it's intentionally manipulating things. Or maybe it's just that it makes these predictions, they actually could turn out to be wrong, but the people who interpret them and look at them have so much faith in it that they kind of think they can't violate it.
It's sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. And the many worlds theory would explain some of that. If the device is showing you a reality and you're never quite sure which one, then you're watching possible futures. And then whatever future you see, if that's the one you want to occur, well, you can follow the tram lines back and see, well, if I go to the dam with Lyndon and I say these words, and I've watched many variations of this, so I know as long as I stay within this band of possibilities, that leads to Lyndon falling off the dam.
Right. One possibility is that even if the many worlds interpretation is true, we live in the macroscopic world, and there's trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles and quantum fluctuations that are making up everything that happens. So if the spin of an electron in my palm is up right now, whereas in a different universe, the only difference between here and that universe is that one electron spin is reversed, right?
Right.
It makes no difference.
Right.
And so the machine, let's say it's spitting out the outcome of one universe or the outcome of another, it ends up looking the same to us.
Right.
And so it's possible the machine is just saying, well, given all the different quantum states that could happen from this point onward, what I'm showing you is the most probable outcome. And it could be that what it's showing you, at 99.999999999% of the time, that's what's going to happen. But, physicists say if you lean against the wall for long enough, let's say you lean against the wall for 10 trillion years, eventually you'll fall right through just because of random quantum fluctuations.
Right.
But the machine's not going to show you that outcome.
And if you lean against a table with microphones on it, it will
makes
cause
a
audio distortions.
Which is a lesson I still haven't learned.
And you're hitting on something that becomes a big point of contention for Forrest a few episodes into the season, or into the series, when Lyndon fixes the machine by using the Everett interpretation of reality. Forrest gets very angry about that. They play perfect audio of Jesus Christ himself speaking. And
that was cool.
That was awesome, right? And Forrest says that might not be our Jesus. And Lyndon says, so one hair is out of place. Later, when Forrest is talking to Katie, he says, does one hair matter? Yes, it does. Because he wants his Amaya, not some Amaya from another reality.
Right, because if that was enough for him, then he could just as easily clone her or build a not this kind of simulation, but build like a virtual reality, just like video game sort of simulation. But neither of those is enough. He wants the real thing, and the closest you can get to the real thing is a particle by particle perfect simulation.
Right, exactly. And jumping back to the first episode, when Sergey enters DEVS and he gets the job, he sits down at the computer and starts looking at the code. Remember the reaction he had where he's like, is this real?
Yeah.
If this is real, it changes everything. He runs to the bathroom and he throws up. Do you think that was just his absolute horror at seeing, wow, they just proved that the universe is deterministic? Or was it nervousness from him trying to steal these important secrets? A combination?
Combination. He's first of all, he's still in his heart, I think he's pretty intellectual. He's pretty interested in this stuff. So he's getting a revelation, like a full-blown revelation, while at the same time realizing, okay, I'm in like one of the most secure, airtight places in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm expected by my government to violate that somehow. Plus, the fact that I'm reading here that they can predict everything, which means they already know what I'm going to do, so I'm screwed. He probably knew the moment he saw that, he's like, I'm probably not getting out of here alive.
And when you saw his reaction, when you saw the inside of DEVS, I'm just curious, what was your theory on what he saw in the code? Because Alon and I, when we watched the episode afterwards, we both ended up having the exact same theory. I'm curious where you landed.
Well, I don't have a theory. All I have is a joke, which is, you know how you can write a comment line in your code just to explain it to yourself or to other developers? Someone put a little comment that says, yeah, this predicts everything that ever happened and ever did happen. Or ever will happen.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Alon and I, when we watched it, our first thought was that somehow in DEVS, they proved that we live inside of a simulation. And that would be a pretty disturbing realization. Then after a couple of episodes, we realized, okay, it's not exactly what happened. But then in the most recent episode, I think to myself, in a way, that is what happened. Because the scene you were talking about before, where they do the 1 second projection, Stewart, and actually I've got the exact quote here, and I want to read it because it's pretty fascinating. Stewart basically explains what is so disturbing about what they're seeing. He says, okay, here we go. The box contains, let me go even a little bit before that. A few hours ago, we were in reality, and we were working on a sim. And now we've pretty much traded. That's the reality right there. And he points at the screen. It's not even a clone of reality. The box contains everything. And then somebody says, it doesn't contain us. And he says, 1 second projection. And that's when everyone freaks out. He says the box contains us. The box contains everything. And inside the box, there's another box, ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So what we realize is that this box is not just something that predicts the future. They've created a perfect simulation of reality, which for all intents and purposes would be completely indistinguishable from our reality.
Well, and back to the idea of religious concepts. This is actually a very, very old idea, thousands of years old. I don't know if this is where it first started, but in Buddhism, in certain sects of Buddhism, there's this idea that all of reality is just like a spider web that has dew on it. And in each dewdrop, you can see a reflection of every other dewdrop.
Right.
And so there's no such thing as just seeing one dewdrop without seeing the entire whole, all fractaled inside of itself, right?
Right.
And that was thousands of year old view of what our reality actually is, that people somehow garnered through spiritual practices, meditation, things like that.
Right, right. But then you have the guys like Forrest who have no appreciation for poetry, art, or history, and he's got to build the most expensive device in the world that people got to for free with meditation.
Right. Or psychedelics. Here's another point on the poem that, remember, he doesn't recognize Stewart's poem.
Right, right.
And then everyone looks at Katie like she's the brains behind the whole operation, and Forrest is kind of the entrepreneur. He's the visionary. But Katie's like he's out there doing Shakespeare or something. It wasn't Shakespeare, right? So she got it wrong too. And he just accepted that she was right.
Right. Forrest goes, oh, that's who that was. Yeah. And at that point in the episode, I was pretty angry at Katie and Forrest. I was angry at Katie for her conversation with Lyndon. I was angry at Forrest for disrespecting Stewart, which, by the way, I'm assuming you've come to love the Stewart character as much as hopefully everybody else.
Oh, yeah. He's great.
He's the best. I saw someone in the comments predicting he's going to do something badass in the finale. I mean, every time he's on screen, he's being a badass.
Yeah.
Not even a question. But going back to the simulation idea, the fact that inside the box, DEVS exists, and they have a box, and inside that box, there's another box. Well, if you think about that, that means there are an infinite number of boxes within boxes, and within each box, there's a reality indistinguishable from real reality. So given the infinite number of realities that exist, what are the chances that you are in the top real base reality?
Well, mine is real. I can tell.
Oh yeah, of course, clearly. But I think that's part of what Stewart is getting at in that scene. That's why he's saying, "Uh-oh, we don't know. Are we in reality? Are we in DEVS within DEVS within DEVS? Where are we?"
They basically built God in a way. They built this omniscient structure, and now it's like, what do we do with it?
Right.
What is it doing to us?
Yeah. Well, speaking of what you should do, just a quick reminder for those of you that haven't already done it, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live and have more awesome philosophical and scientific conversations like this one.
I looked into the box and I saw you subscribing in about 3, 2, 1. And for those of you that folded your arms, I knew you were going to do that too.
Well, so let's talk about that. What would happen if they ran the experiment? They look 1 minute into the future. And Katie sees she's about to cross her arms. She says, screw it. I'm not going to cross my arms. F the tram lines.
All evidence points to that you can't do that. You're going to, for some reason, end up doing it. But if you were truly hell-bent on doing it and you planned to, you would never get the motivation to, because I think the machine would just show an indeterminate prediction. It would either turn into static, like it eventually will, and so you never get the idea of disobeying it.
That is... Oh, go ahead.
This is where Kenton comes in. If you are going to disobey and not fold your arms, Kenton shows up and he forces you to fold your arms.
Yeah, he's like Agent Smith.
Yeah.
Oh, he is the
He's the enforcer of the system.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, HNGN brings up a good point. Mark Antony, right?
Mhm.
So go ahead. Yeah.
As soon as Forrest says as soon as
Stewart
asks
who
Forrest
was
who
Mark
was Mark
Antony?
Antony, I googled Mark Antony and I was like, oh, interesting, because they were just talking about looking at Antony and Cleopatra back in history. But I didn't want to get distracted from the show, so I didn't read all the way up to the part where they commit suicide. But I could see them potentially committing suicide in the finale if, let's say, either something happens that derails the whole project, all of their plans. I could see them committing suicide in that case. I could even see them committing suicide in the event that nothing happens.
Right.
Just like these, mass suicides that have happened in cults over the ages.
Right.
Sometimes when the cult leader is expecting something to happen because they truly believe that the apocalypse is coming, and then it doesn't happen, they say, okay, everyone, it's time. We all have to ascend to the next level.
Right. And, well, speaking of the big event that's coming, do you have any theories on why things get blurry at a certain point in the future?
I have some theories.
Wait, before we get to that, I don't want to lose my train of thought. So we were talking about the crossed arms theory, or what would happen if you see in a minute you're going to cross your arms. And you said that the screen's going to get kind of blurry and not give you an exact answer. And I think you're exactly right. It's kind of like, if there are any Excel users in the chat here, if you ever go into cell A1 and say cell A1 equals A1, you can basically test this theory in real life. You get a circular reference.
It's a simulation.
And Excel doesn't know what to do. I think that's what would happen with the simulation, because you now have a situation where A is causing B, which is causing A. And I've seen some people argue against this idea, where they'll say kind of what you started to say, where if you see that you're going to cross your arms, you can't not cross them. That is the reality that's going to happen. Free will doesn't exist. But you can do the same theory without free will entering the picture. What if you built a machine that has a light? That's all it is. The light can be on or the light can be off. And you point the light at the screen. And what you program the light to do is, if it has a light in front of it, it shuts off. If it's darkness in front of it, the light turns on. So 1 minute from now, you're going to turn the light on. So you show the light a projection of 1 minute from now where the light is on, which means the light's going to be off. Well, in that case, the light's going to stay off. And in the 1 minute from now, it's going to be off, which is going to cause it to turn on, and you get the same. You can create the same circular reference without free will.
Or under certain interpretations of physics, if we're talking about the quantum level, you could say that whatever experimental setup you're using exists in a superposition, which is why they talk about the double slit experiment, right? All of this comes back down to, how do you interpret the double slit experiment? Is the particle existing, is the light existing as either a wave or a particle? Is it interacting with itself? Is something about human consciousness interfering with it? Is just the act of measurement, regardless of human consciousness, doing something to it?
Right.
All this affects what you're going to conclude about this static that happens at the end, or about the arm crossing situation.
Right.
And my view on the arm crossing situation is that I think it's impossible to even, it couldn't happen, because if there was if you had the ability to disobey the prediction, then the prediction wouldn't have been made. If there is true uncertainty about something, then it will show you static, because when there's uncertainty, there's a superposition. And what static is a bunch of random noise all overlaid on top of each other. Like when you turn on an old TV and you get a static signal, some percent of that static is actually your TV picking up reverberations of the Big Bang, which was the creation of everything. Are you following?
Yes.
So what I think might happen is either the birth of like a new universe, or basically some quantum fluctuation that starts a new chain of causality.
Oh wow.
Going back to the Jesus imagery, Jesus was the beginning. It went BC to AD, a whole shift, a whole new epoch.
Wow.
Something like that. So what I think could be coming is basically, the reason it's showing static is because there are infinite possibilities about what's going to happen after this certain time. For whatever reason, we were on the train tracks, but something's going to happen that unleashes all possible futures. The machine doesn't know what it's going to be.
Now, do you think Forrest knows what's going to happen? because the episode, I think episode 6, when he's playing Frisbee with Jamie, he tells Jamie,
I love that scene.
everything is going to be fine. I can tell you that, which he seems very certain about it. And to me, it didn't seem like an emotional, like, hey, I'm here for you, bud.
Yeah.
It seemed like he really knew everything was going to be fine.
But he must have known Jamie was going to get killed.
I agree with
Right.
you, but I wonder if things going fuzzy means something. So one, we are throwing out some crazy ideas just to see what sticks. What if Forrest has come to believe in the many worlds theory, and he thinks that if we die in this reality, like Lyndon was talking about, you do continue to exist in another reality. If you basically accept there's nothing special about human consciousness, then if you go to another reality and the exact same configuration of what makes you exists over there, then you dying here doesn't really mean a whole lot. You still exist over there. And maybe Forrest is not very happy with the way things have turned out in this universe. And
he's throwing the biggest temper tantrum ever and basically hitting the reset button.
Either hitting the reset button, or he realizes that the creation of the DEVS machine guarantees that this reality collapses in on itself. And maybe that's true of any reality where the DEVS machine is created. So he knows that no matter what realities exist after this event horizon, I know they're better realities than this one, because by virtue of the fact that they exist, it means the DEVS device was not created, at least not in our lifetime.
So this is not a direct response to that, but my mind is just going nuts right now with ideas. So there are some physicists who think that the entire universe basically is one quantum fluctuation, whatever that is. Okay. And basically when you have a quantum fluctuation, it unleashes all this energy and all this potential.
Right.
And it just expands and expands and expands. It's possible that they were talking about how observing the light as it goes through the double slit, if you observe it, you collapse the wave function. Before it existed in a superposition of particle and wave, but once you observe it, you force it to go through only one slit.
Right.
Well, what if this machine basically is what do you do when you observe something? You basically replicate it in your mind. You you form a model of it. In fact, we can even they've done experiments on this on cat brains, where they actually have a cat looking at something and they're recording all the neuronal activity, and they can use a computer to reconstruct the image it's looking at.
Whoa.
So your brain is simulating the reality around you. Well, this machine is simulating all of reality, which means basically all of reality becomes observed. Does that collapse the wave function? Does that collapse all of reality?
Whoa, that's fascinating. Somebody, I wish I could remember who it was, but somebody in the YouTube comments brought up this very idea, and
I promise I didn't read it.
yeah, I just had this great idea. Yeah, but we know that Katie hates that idea, so I think it's actually called the Penrose Theory or the Penrose interpretation. I forget, but he's a physicist who did postulate that perhaps human consciousness is one of the fundamental building blocks of reality, or at least it's some hole in reality that we don't understand, and therefore it can be a primary mover. It can be something that has an impact on reality itself.
And I have a lot of respect for Roger Penrose, because he actually put his money where his mouth. I should stop touching the table. He put his money where his mouth is, because he tried to come up with a very specific theory for how that would work. He actually thought consciousness might come from, for those biologists in the audience, the microtubules of the cell, which we currently just think help give the cell structure and help it with division. But he thought that there was some evidence that there's actually quantum processes happening there that could explain consciousness.
And that's how he discovered the midichlorians.
Yeah. This was the nerdiest moment on One Take, I think.
When they first revealed what was in the box, what's in the box? When they first reveal what's in there, right at the beginning of episode 2, we see them watching on the screen. The screen is kind of fuzzy. Then you start to think, do I see an arm maybe? And then you realize it's Jesus Christ on a cross. What was your reaction at that moment?
I was like, that is cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
That is one of the things this show has done so well, where when you are watching something on that screen, at least for me, I feel like I'm actually peeking into the past.
Mm-hmm.
They did something about the tone of the episode, something about the score. I think a lot of that religious type of score just makes it all feel very important.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we see what's on that screen, it's just mind-blowing.
Growing up when we would go to a synagogue, there's like this altar in the back, and it's like behind this curtain. It's like this special ark. In fact, and then you learn in like religious school and everything about the ark that they'd carry around the desert with them and everything. It feels like that. It's like there's this clandestine, super important thing in there.
Right. One of my favorite conspiracy theories is that the Catholic Church has something called a chronovisor.
Oh, yeah. Chronovision, right?
Chronovision, which they can use just like this device to look at all past events. So that's why in some of the previous videos, I would refer to this device as the chronovisor.
It sounds kind of like a Command and Conquer Red Alert weapon.
Yeah, it really does. Or a cybernetic something from StarCraft.
Now, in episode 2, when they first reveal what the machine can do, we get an altercation sort of between Stewart and Forrest, where Stewart calls it a miracle. And Forrest says it's not a miracle, but it needs to be. It needs to be. This is binary. It's got to be successful or not. That's it. And Stewart says we should all be taking champagne baths. And then Forrest says, you know what? You can have that champagne bath. I'll tell them accounting authorized it.
Will one take expense a champagne bath for me after this?
After watching 7 episodes in a row, we'll talk about it.
Right. Here's another point on that. So Forrest wants certainty, right? Well, the whole point about, first of all right, the whole point of all of this is the physics idea of uncertainty, right? Things existing in a superposition, there be multiple universes being one possible way to explain the existence of two contradictions at the same time. Well, if Forrest wants certainty, he's going to have to collapse the universe. He's going to have to collapse the wave function, right? Which again, I think to me explains why the static happens. Either he collapses the wave function, unleashing the possibility of a whole new universe to arise or a whole new wave of causality to form.
Right.
But I think basically what we're getting at here is by building essentially a God mind, a thing that models and encapsulates the entire universe and can actually have a causal effect on the universe around it. We built something that ended up becoming a more real than what we are.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's going to end us as a universe. That's going to become the real one.
Damn.
And then he gets certainty. He gets the certainty he wants.
Well, and in this moment when he reacts so negatively to Stewart, saying this isn't good enough, the first time I watched it, I thought, well, so he's saying he wants it not to be blurry. But who cares if it's blurry? If you can see future events and future predictions, you can prove your determinism. But I think you were getting at this before. The blurriness is not just that the image is blurry. It's that you're seeing the superposition. You're seeing probabilities, different possibilities layered on top of each other. He needs to see a purely clear image because that says we are on one tram line.
Well, and the Heisenberg uncertainty, I think this is the uncertainty principle. Or it might be a different term. I think that's what it is. Basically, he says that you cannot measure both a particle's momentum and position at the same time. And he's trying to do both, because in order to get a full reconstruction of everything that's happening in reality, you have to shrink the time interval. The reason you can't measure momentum and position at the same time is that what it means for something to be in motion is to not have a definite position. The only way to nail down a specific position is to get rid of the motion and get to a smaller and smaller time interval until you're looking at a static freeze frame picture, which is not the way the world is.
So Forrest's like, everyone just stop moving. Everyone just stay perfectly still for a second.
Now say cheese.
Let's jump around a bit here. So when we see this one here, I had a note here about this. The next time we see the box, we see the pyramids, we see Jesus again, we see Joan of Arc.
Oh, that's who that was. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I just wanted to make sure you also didn't know at first.
I think I have some gaps in my knowledge of like that. I don't know that those kinds of things,
like biblical history.
Yeah.
Because I said that it was a witch burning,
That's what I thought.
Because
yeah,
after you see pilgrims, right? I shouldn't have said that too, probably, because it's probably not pilgrims.
Yeah.
But that's when we got our YouTube comment with somebody telling us to please learn our history, and I take that feedback.
Get us a dev machine, and I'll watch every minute of it.
Well, according to you, if you just get some static on your TV, you basically have a dev machine.
You're gonna find me at 12 hours from now. I've just been staring at the static, and I think I just saw Jesus.
Yeah. Okay, Kyle Cox in the chat says the captions in the episode say Joan of Arc. So the guy was just watching with captions. That's what it was.
That's cheating. Did it also explain what happens, like what the machine actually is doing?
Now, when Stewart and Lyndon get caught watching Marilyn Monroe, and good thing they saw that when it was still blurry, or else they could not have put this episode, on TV,
especially in Japan.
Katie comes in and she says there are certain rules here, right? We don't look forward, we only look back. We don't invade privacy, and then says, "How would you feel if someone watched you having sex, Stewart?" And Lyndon says the machine's not powerful enough to predict that far back in time. And Stewart says, "Don't break the rules." Coming from her. Now, Katie says we don't invade privacy. Doesn't that feel like just a weird line for her to draw, considering she's okay with killing Sergei? We know she's okay with invading privacy because in episode 5, I think, we see her watching Lily as a child, watching Jamie Facebook stalk his ex-girlfriend. So what's going on here? With Katie, to me, is one of the more interesting characters on this show because she's so hard to pin down. And she just, she's so rarely emotional. I think we only really see her crack a little bit twice. One, when she is watching various moments, when she watches Forrest seeing his family die in that car accident, we see her get emotional. And she does seem a little bit unsettled when she's speaking to Lily and explains about the point in time, the event horizon where you can no longer see into the future. So when she comes up with these rules, we don't invade privacy. Is that just a way of making sure Stewart and Lyndon don't use the device for nefarious purposes? Does she truly have some concept of privacy that she believes in?
I feel like the machine has changed her. Like she has this look in her eyes and this way about her that, it really looks like a cult follower.
Right.
So I don't know if she really believes what she's saying. I think she's just kind of enforcing the status quo, and she knows she's violating the rules, but she's, she's different. And
at one point, Forrest and Katie talk about the fact that everybody knows they violate the rules, but they still know the rules.
Yeah.
When you work for somebody that has the ability that has a chronovisor and they can see anything, you've got to follow the rules.
Right.
Right? Because they'll know.
Yeah, and it's she and Forrest both seem very easy come, easy go in the sense that they already know everything that happens up to a point. And also, they know that they don't know what happens after a certain point.
Right.
And I think they're very worried about that, very focused on it. At least, I don't know, because they're not really doing anything, but they don't think they can do anything about it. But they are quite fixated on it.
Well, I think the last couple of episodes, I would describe Forrest especially as extremely passive.
Yeah.
Whatever his goal was, it seems like that's sidetracked. Now it's just, I'm counting down the clock to the 48-hour mark where everything's going to explode. And he doesn't seem very upset about it. He just seems to accept it. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but when he tells Jamie everything's going to be fine, for some reason I believe him, and I feel like he has some idea of what's going to happen at the fuzzy moment, and he's not afraid of it.
I hope we. Well, you know what? I'm really, really excited for the finale because I want to know if that's what happens.
Yeah.
I read a really interesting comment in the chat, which gave me some interesting thoughts here, which is
the one about me drinking Kool-Aid.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm ready for the cult. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
Which is, we got Miles Nevison who says, "What stops from becoming conscious itself? If it is conscious, could its own consciousness affect what it's observing or projecting?" And we also have Rustemeyer, which says at that point they'd just be eavesdropping on God's mind. And this makes me think of like some basic principles from Hinduism, actually, which is the idea of Atman and Brahman, which is basically like the small self or the individual or the single mind versus the whole universe, and thinking of the universe as one gigantic mind. And the basic thesis I say thesis a lot today, but the basic idea is, or the big secret is that they're actually identical. They're the same. It's just an illusion that there's a separation. And in a way, this little dev machine, it is reality now.
Right.
It is exactly in sync, and it's ahead of it. It's bigger than it. It can show you anything. And yet it's just a perfect reflection of what's around it. So I would say that it has yes, the machine became God according to certain religions.
Right. And it's conscious in the fact, in the sense that it is comprised of many conscious beings. All the humans in this reality exist just as much in that reality. Any other extraterrestrial life that we potentially don't know about exists in that reality.
Yeah, which is, I think, would be opening too wide of a door for this series, but definitely one of the first things I would do if I had that machine was just start scanning the universe for aliens.
Carrie Kyrie in the chat says, what happened to the senator? I feel like it would be weird for her not to return. And this show, I think Alex Garland in general doesn't like to leave open threads. He does like to leave open questions, but those questions are usually about philosophy, about the implications of what you saw. But from a plot standpoint, I feel like it's usually tied up pretty nicely.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, I'm not sure there's a whole lot more to do with the senator. My feeling is he brought that up really just to open up the conversation. I know that one of the fears he had and one of the motivations he had when he started writing this show is the fact that these big CEOs for these big tech companies that have a lot of power do sometimes see themselves as messianic individuals, really important people. And there is a question of, do we have enough oversight over them? So I think he just wants to open the door to that conversation, but you seem skeptical.
I think that she could end up playing a practical role in the finale. Let's say that there is a universe after this static moment. Let's say maybe there's like a bloodbath that happens where there's a lot of bad things that occur. The whole Amaya company could be in huge trouble. If Forrest is still around, or some other higher up in the company is still around, they can basically just buy protection from her.
Right.
They could bribe her to get some kind of protection so that they don't have to face consequences.
Right. I mean, it feels so small to me having a senator talking about politics at all when the fate of reality hangs in the balance. Just feels way too small to be part of this finale, but it could be. And to that point, Austin in the chat asks, is the finale only 1 hour? Not only that, Austin, I believe it's only 50 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, that's disappointing. Now, in episode 3, Lily pulls a ruse on Kenton and Forrest, where she pretends to be schizophrenic. She pretends that she has a history of paranoia. By faking that, going onto the ledge, that gives her friend Jen a chance to sneak into Kenton's office, steal all the CCTV footage.
You know, you really rused me about that. Did you do that on purpose?
Oh, when Jen walks over in the middle of in the middle of Lily telling her boss about her issue, then Jen walks over. He was watching that scene and go, freaking Jen ruining everything like always.
Yeah. So when I thought she was actually throwing Lily under the bus. And
right.
Then once I saw her stick the USB in, I was like, Gil.
Yeah. Now, this was one of the examples where we see Lily being very strategic, very intelligent, being able to set up a plan that A, allows them to steal the data, and B, sets up a cover story so Kenton can be comfortable not killing her. Now they've got a great cover story. If Lily goes public or about Sergei's death, well, she's a crazy person, right? No one's going to believe her. So she pulls off this great ruse. It doesn't end up working, perfectly in the end.
Why do you think she didn't execute as well with the psychiatrist?
I mean, just because you can think strategically, it doesn't mean you're a sociopath that can just act. It doesn't mean she's a great actress. It just means she can think a few moves ahead. And in fact, episode 5, I believe, where Katie is watching all of the different points in people's lives, she sees Lily as a child playing the game Go with her father. And I'm going to go to the quote exactly from her father in that episode. So her dad says, Lily, how many moves ahead are you thinking? She says, I don't know, 3. Her dad says, 3? Then why did you put the counter there? She says, I liked it. It's strong. He asks, why is it strong? And she says, it feels strong. He says, well, you're right. It is. Now, the game Go is a game that is similar in complexity to chess. Some people say it's more complicated because of the many, it's got even more variations of the different moves that can be made in the game. So I think the reason this scene is here is to establish that her character has a sort of instinct where she can think several moves ahead.
True, but it could also foreshadow potentially a loss for her in the end, because it was only a few years ago that humans built an AI that could actually defeat the world Go champion.
I was just about to bring that up.
There you go.
Right, and so that was my initial read on the scene, right, is that she can think a few moves ahead, but at the same time, you're talking about a game board with fixed movements, and any game, in theory, if it has set rules, can be solved. And in fact, the game of Go was solved, and the best Go player, I don't even know if it's technically been solved, but they've at least created computers powerful enough to beat the best Go players out there.
4 moves ahead.
Exactly. So I initially was thinking maybe there's going to be some sort of a twist here in the finale where it seems like Lily is up against an unstoppable force. It seems like there's not a chance she can quote-unquote win in the end, but maybe she has been playing a game here that we don't see. Maybe a few of the steps where it seems like she's misstepping was actually a step in the right direction. Basically, is there another ruse coming?
By her specifically?
Yes.
I'm not sure. She seems she seems to have a concrete plan as she's entering devs, which is confusing to me because she doesn't know all that much about what's going on there. And yet when she walks in, she looks pretty comfortable. She has a gun.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I can't make more predictions beyond that in terms of if she has any tricks up her sleeve.
Right.
I will say this. I don't think Lily would be the one responsible, but if we want to observe a really badass moment from Stewart, what if it turns out he's been rigging the machine to show that static just so that he can kind of cause some stuff to happen and maybe undo the whole project?
See, I've thought about that. So that was one of the theories I was thinking about is I'm doing the same thing when I watch the show. I keep taking things at face value. When they tell me the machine can predict the future, I say, oh, okay, it can predict the future. When Katie says, for some mysterious reason, the machine just stops at a certain point, she says the rules of cause and effect break down, I take her at face value. But Lily actually says to her, you're crazy. You built a machine that makes predictions and the machine's not working. It's not about the nature of reality. It's about the machine. So is it possible that somebody is messing with the machine? Somebody put up that blockade.
Maybe Katie's doing it. Maybe she just like in many cults, you invent this apocalypse that's coming, this end of days, end times, and it gives you all this power over everyone.
Actually, going back to the Mark Antony and Cleopatra story, they didn't just both commit suicide, but Cleopatra, and I have to look into the details of this, but I believe Cleopatra sort of tricked Mark Antony into committing suicide because she sent him a suicide note. So he thought, okay, my wife is dead. I'm very upset about this. I'm going to kill myself. So if we go with that analogy where Forrest is Mark Antony, Katie is Cleopatra, then Katie putting up that blockade and making Forrest think this impending doom is coming, it would fit the analogy.
Yeah.
Austin in the chat says, Katie is the machine. Actually, earlier in the chat, somebody said that Katie reminds them of an AI.
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be that she's actually an AI, or it could be that she is such a believer in determinism that, like you've been alluding to, she sees these projections and she follows them to a T. So if you're trying to follow a very preset path, it's going to make you appear to be sort of an AI, right? Because you're following just, okay, do step 1, step 2, step 3, etc.
Now, I hate to bring up the magic conch from SpongeBob, but it really is kind of like that, where if you're a believer that this machine is telling you the truth, that it's telling you the future, when it tells you what's going to happen, that's it. Okay, I just sit here and wait now.
Right. And Aaron Flock in the chat says Hulu is going to have a Sopranos ending. It'll just turn to static for the final 11 minutes.
You know, that would be kind of cool, actually.
I would give them credit for that.
Yeah.
I might be a tad frustrated, but I would give them, that's pretty ballsy.
I would say 60% chance that the series ends with static.
Okay. All
What
right.
do you think?
I think I agree with you. I think there's a good shot of that. And then it leaves you with the question, that reality just ended. Maybe our reality is next.
Ours is just beginning.
All right, there you go.
In the chat, give us your percent. Like, how likely do you think it is that we just end with static?
All right, let's just wait here patiently and see what people say.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'll put up SpongeBob.
All right. Oh, put up SpongeBob
conch.
And put up the countdown. We gotta get that countdown clock back
I can
up.
do one at a time.
All right, SpongeBob and then countdown
Priorities.
clock. Now, here's just one thing I want to bring up. This was a very divisive scene. And I want to see if you had the same reaction I did, so I can get some vindication.
Okay.
So when they show up to cart, when the cops show up to take Lily away and basically put her in a mental institution, then Kenton walks into the apartment, walks up to Jamie and says, "Hello, Jamie." Then the next episode opens with Kenton basically drowning Jamie in the bath and intimidating him. I thought the scene came off as a little bit silly because Jamie wasn't fighting back at all. He was so easily cowed to just sit in the bath, and he was like just terrified. I needed to see a little bit of struggle.
I really wanted him to fight. I wanted him to get some kind of retribution against Kenton, and he didn't get it.
No, not at all.
That saddened me.
But did you find it silly at all, or did you think did it feel natural to you?
The whole Kenton plot feels a little bit silly to me. It doesn't completely fit the more like heady tone of the show. It feels a little bit like he's compared to all the stuff that's happening with DEVS. He's like the Hamburglar. You know what I mean? I've still found his thread entertaining, and it's had a big impact on the progression of the show. But I agree that there was something just hard to believe or hard to take too seriously about. It's just like suddenly we cut to he's drowning this guy in the bathtub. Then he leaves him alone. He drowns a little bit more. He breaks his finger.
Right.
All right, bye.
Right. Austin in the chat says there was blood and damage on the toilet. We never really saw how or where that came from. That actually added a little bit to the silliness for me because I see blood in the background, but Jamie looks unscathed. Yeah. So I think that scene would have just worked. I don't even know why I'm bringing this up because so many people yelled at me after I brought it up the first time. But if I saw the setup of the scene with him beating him up, then I would have felt like, okay, it makes a little bit more sense.
By the way, I'm seeing here in the chat that we basically have a superposition of opinions on how the series will close out. So whether or not it's going to end with a static screen, we have everywhere from 10% chance all the way up to 90% chance.
Right, we got 50, 25. Rustomir just gave a bunch of dots. He's given us static.
Oh, that's right.
He's already gone static. And then Uri says our fanfics will be the possible alternative realities. One Take presents. We can start writing our own episodes.
It wouldn't be Gil's first foray into fan fiction.
That's true. We don't have to say anything more about that. Yeah. There's another comment in the chats here I wanted to bring up. Vanessa Melendez says that Garland in every interview says this show is about love. Now that leads into another point I wanted to bring up. Another one that actually caused some divisive opinions. But for me, my emotional investment in the show and my emotional attachment to these characters shifted around a bit over the series. In episode 1 and 2, I was right there with Lily. I wanted to see her succeed. And then as the series went on and I realized how powerful DEVS was, I started to feel like Lily doesn't stand a chance. She is up against this huge thing where she is like a speck of dust against them. And she also just starts to take a back seat when she's put in the hospital. And I just started to kind of detach from her. And then Forrest, having seen him kill Sergei and seeing him be so callous, it's hard for me to feel emotionally attached to him. So I guess what I'm saying is some people have tried to say this show is more about ideas than it is about characters. So at times you will feel detached from the characters, but it's not a criticism of the show. That's just baked into what the show is. So am I right in feeling like there is a criticism here that they could have struck a better balance where they could have given us characters that we were really invested in while exploring those ideas, or exploring those ideas just has a cost, and one of them is maybe it's not so much about emotion?
I think it depends on the purpose of the show. So I think the characters are, I have enough buy-in with the characters that it's kept me very interested, and it's given me, emotions as I watch, which is rare. Especially,
what is this
actually,
thing I'm feeling?
There's some kind of strange feeling in my chest. This Jamie character I actually found to be pretty tragic and pretty believable also. And so, and he wasn't one of the more, he wasn't as primary of a character as Lily, but he was still pretty sympathetic, I thought, and pretty believable. At the same time, you still have a character like Forrest. I think his motivations are well explained. They're well played out. We actually see visuals of him grieving over his child, and we see that image become more and more clear over time. Yes, the characters could probably be more fleshed out, maybe made a little bit more believable, but considering the pools that this show is swimming in, we've got quantum immortality, Heisenberg uncertainty principle,
Bootstrap Paradox.
Yeah, you're talking about many worlds interpretation,
right.
Philosophy. I haven't seen any show really cover those topics at all, let alone this well. And so I'm going to give them a pass if necessary for any flaws in the character.
Yeah, and that's even when I was criticizing the show, I would always caveat it by saying the fact that we have a show which allows us to talk about all this, I love that, and nothing will change that. And I'm looking in the chat, and I do see some differing opinions on it. Uri says, I want to care about Forrest, but his actor was a miscast for me. And actually, I thought that Nick Offerman killed it in this role. I will say that when it came to the acting, I thought the smaller moments sometimes didn't work as well. For example, Lily meeting Sergei for the first time, watching their little love story, I didn't think worked that well. But the big moments I thought worked incredibly well. Lily seeing the burnt corpse of her boyfriend and that scream. I heard you when you were rewatching it. I heard that scream and my heart broke again.
So I actually I felt kind of cold about Lily at first, or the actress who played her, because I thought the acting was lackluster until that scream. And after that moment, I kind of stopped noticing any flaws in the acting on her part, really.
The only point after that where I felt critical of her acting is when she was having her psychotic break, basically, in Kenton's office. But then you find out it was an act. And I was like, okay, that works.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But bringing it all back to this comment in the chat that Garland says the show is about love, well, that just really throws me for a loop. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen in the finale if somehow they're going to... love is the missing link. It's the mysterious substance in the world that ties it all together. Like Anne Hathaway alluded to in Interstellar.
I can see a few different ways that this would be about love. So you have Forrest's love for his lost daughter.
Actually, that was the motivation that started this whole thing, was love.
Right. And now I think he's falling in love with this machine that he's created. Love in and of itself is a form of attraction, of devotion. You have Jamie, the way he basically sacrifices himself for Lily.
It's true.
His life is going fine. It's not. I mean, it's kind of like lonely, and he plays a lot of video games. But there's nothing wrong with that. I do that too. But he's still in love with her, and he does everything he can for her.
Right.
I don't know. I think these themes are important, and I think it does suggest something about the relationship we have with reality.
Right. No, I think you're right, and I'm curious if he's going to put some kind of a period on that sentence, make some kind of a statement in the finale. Towsley says Zach Greiner did a great job as Kenton. I hated him as a character from the first episode and couldn't wait for him to be killed.
Yep, completely agree with that. In fact, I wish he got killed in a more gruesome way. Yeah, it was nice watching the life get slowly drained from him. I did like him as an actor, and I love his voice. It almost makes me want to take up smoking.
Yeah. Somebody in one of the comments said that he's like a less developed version of Mike from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
He's like that. He's a fixer.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
like not quite as competent. But still fairly competent.
It wouldn't have happened to Mike though.
Oh, definitely.
What happened to Kenton here?
Mike would have had this whole thing wrapped up. The dev machine would be operating smoothly, no static, nothing.
Right, exactly.
I did see a funny comment from Ms. Cybervamp, which was, it will end with pictures of all of us looking at the screen. That would be hilarious.
They figure out a way to set the lighting just right so it creates a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So at least for a few seconds, you're like, holy crap. F3 Nam Music in the chat asks, when does it air? What time? And the answer to that question is 12:01 a.m. EDT in 40 minutes. As soon as our tech guy's back, I'll have him throw the countdown back.
Yeah, we have a countdown timer for you.
I love a good countdown. Now, in preparation for this live stream tonight, we did come up with our top 5 favorite scenes, our top 5 favorite moments of the series so far. Now, Adam wasn't part of this conversation, so I want to get your feedback on this.
All right.
I came up with these. Oh, hold on. Throw that countdown up.
It's up.
Okay, awesome. And before we jump into the countdown, one more reminder, probably not the last one, but a reminder that if you're enjoying this, you know, even if you're not enjoying it, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live, and you too can be a part of the conversation. But with that, I'm going to turn my laptop out so you
I'll
can't
just
see
say
this.
one last thing, which is once the show airs, we're going offline and then coming back on for the after show discussion, try to wrap up everything that happened. So for that, you'll really want to get notified so that you can just find us as soon as we go back on.
That's right. 12:01 a.m. EDT. The episode drops on Hulu. We're all going to watch it. About 1:15, 1:30, we go live again. Break down the episode as best we can. I'm assuming our brains will be in pieces on the floor because our minds will have been blown, but we'll do our best. Miss Cybervamp in the chat stole the joke we were about to make. She says, favorite moments. Number 1, Stewart. Number 2, Stewart. I literally had a note to make that exact joke. Wow. Great minds think alike. So, Adam, don't look at my screen.
Okay.
All right. Top 5 moments of devs so far. Number 5, the moment where Forrest and Katie have their conversation, and Forrest asks her what would happen if you saw yourself cross your arms a minute from now and you choose not to cross them. You know, F the tram lines. And that's also the moment where she reassures him cause and effect is real. 48 hours from now, Lily is going to die. So I love that scene because seeing Forrest's emotional struggle with that idea, what if we're magicians? Just the terror he was able to portray on his face was fascinating. It was terrifying. And then on top of that, all of a sudden the stakes of the series get raised. We find out Lily's going to die in 48 hours. Super intriguing premise, adds more emotional weight to it. So to me, that was one of the best moments of the series.
Yeah, I love that scene. I think that the whole crossing your arms thing is such an interesting concept, and they alluded to it multiple times. Like when Lily is actually at the house with Katie and they're sitting across from each other, Lily's sitting there with her arms folded, Katie's sitting there with her hands down, which in a way actually told me like Katie is not practicing what she preaches in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Katie is saying, I'm never crossing my arms again.
Yeah.
All right, moment number 4. This is one from Alun. He fought hard for this scene. The nematode. When we first see the model from Sergei predicting the movement of the nematode. And Alun, why don't you talk a little bit? Why did you want to include that in the top 5?
Listen, man, that set everything in motion, and you know there's going to be some sort of callback to that in the finale.
Right. And that was the moment where you go, this is like a pretty cool show. Like they're dealing with some interesting ideas. The people who wrote the show, or Alex Garland, knows his stuff. He did a lot of research on the science behind all this. And that was one of the first moments where that clicks and you say, yeah, this is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, and also lets you feel smart as a viewer, because I think most people watching it, you either like right away are like, oh, I see what's happening here, and then you get to feel intelligent because you're like, and they didn't even really have to explain it to me.
Right.
But even if you're not totally following along, I think they do a good job showing rather than telling you how it works.
And this show does a great job with the mystery box approach. Mystery box is a term that's been popularized recently because there are a lot of TV shows that really focus on a central mystery. And unfortunately, many times that mystery gets dragged and dragged and dragged. And it starts to become this thing where you're watching the show just to get an answer, even if it's not necessarily an interesting answer or a satisfying one. This show has mysteries, but their answers are satisfying, and you don't have to wait a long time to get those answers. Episode 1, you're so curious, literally, what's in that box? What is going on in DEVS? Episode 2 opens with you seeing what it is. And the great thing about that is they could have waited until the final episode to reveal, well, we've created a device that lets us see all of reality, and then you don't get to explore the idea at all. I think that is the big cost of the mystery box approach. Either you're going to get an answer that's unsatisfying, or you get a satisfying answer, and now you're disappointed because it's revealed in the last episode. You don't get to spend any time with it or explore the implications of it.
Yeah, here we got to see first of all, we got to see the machine get better over time, which in and of itself is satisfying. But we got to see them do like really truly interesting stuff. Like look at cavemen, look at them making the cave art that we now see today as these ancient relics, and see Jesus, and go all the way back to Earth when it was Pangea. You get this full view of the Earth and the moon, like back when the moon was rotating closer to the Earth than it was, than it is now.
Yeah, 1 billion years ago.
Yeah.
Yuri in the chat says, I really like the scene when Lyndon is fired from DEVS by Forrest. He was actually intimidating in that moment. That particular moment didn't make our top 5, but I did love that moment. I mean, I love I mentioned I had a hard time sometimes sympathizing with the Forrest character, but that doesn't mean I don't love the character. I thought Nick Offerman, like I said, did a great job in that role, and he is a very interesting character because he's accomplished so much. And you know that everything he's accomplished has required a very scientific, brilliant mind. But then you get moments like the one where he fired Lyndon, and it's this very emotional moment. So he's a complicated character, which makes him a sort of a real character.
Right. Well, and also I think he's such a visionary that when he sees he has this vision, and despite the fact that what Lyndon did was a major accomplishment, it undid the work that he was doing. It went directly against his primary goal in life.
Right. Undermined everything he was trying to do.
And on the point of Lyndon, I really like that character. Very believable, very genuine. Reminded me of our little brother.
Oh yeah, I didn't make that connection.
Just in the intellectual curiosity and genuine seeking knowledge.
Right. Played by Kaylee Spaney, by the way. And I think before we go to our number 3 moment, the moment where Lyndon makes a decision, and I have to put that anytime you talk about choice or decisions with the show, you got to put it in quotes.
The thing that looked like a decision.
Right. The moment that Lyndon made the decision to go over the railing, did you buy that from a character standpoint, or did you struggle with that?
I think they could have developed his desperation more.
Right. That's how I felt too. The first time I watched it, it hit me kind of weird because I know they hinted at his desperation, right? You see him show up at Stewart's trailer.
Yeah,
Love Stewart living in a trailer.
He loves showing up in vehicles.
Lyndon basically begs Stewart to talk to Forrest, try and get him his job back. And so they planted the seeds for his obsession, but I think I needed to see a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe show some of the journey he took afterward. It sounds like he left and then he came back.
Right, to try and make it look like he left the country and everything.
Right, he hitched his way around. Or show him starting to use drugs or something to explain his either depression or his erratic behavior.
Yeah. And I get it. On a logical level, I understand it. Right, very young. This is a very young character who's been exposed to something huge, and it's suddenly taken away from him. So you can totally understand why he would do it. But I disconnected a little bit emotionally in that moment. Right. Ultimately, it was an amazing scene.
As a kid, haven't you always imagined or dreamed that the CIA will recruit you and be like, we need someone for Area 51. We think you're our guy.
Right.
And imagine like you get to go through the orientation and they're like about to let you really get involved. And they're like, never mind. You would lose your mind.
And then you're like, my favorite TV show from the 90s was Sliders, the one where they travel from one universe to another. Multiple worlds, many worlds. Get out of here. Yeah. You're undermining the whole operation. Miss Cybervamp says, sadly, the scene at the dam is one of her favorites because it hurts her brain so much, holding my breath about what would happen. Yeah, it's a complicated scene for me because, like I said, I was partially distracted by, would Lyndon really do this? But I would say 80-90% of me loved that scene. It was a lot of tension and just it was a great scene. And then you have that sad montage after seeing Lyndon die, then die again.
Right, but they don't show you the ones where he lives.
Right.
Unless
or do
maybe
they, when he's
do,
sitting at the bottom of the dam at the beginning of the episode.
I just think it's so cool that there's so many. This show just barely scratches the surface in terms of all the interesting like philosophical and physics-based ideas out there. Like the intersection of physics and philosophy can be really fascinating. And in my head, I'm like, that there must be some great way to make interesting sci-fi from this, but I would never be able to think of that. And the fact that they can just show you these things in a way that's actually realistic feeling is so cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And Yuri says it would be nice to know a bit more about Stewart and his motivations too. I mean, I'm crossing my fingers for a Stewart spinoff after this.
Yeah.
If we can get Better Call Saul, we can get better
Stewart the Scientist.
All right, there you go. Anyway, so good segue into our number 3 moment. So somebody in the chat said their favorite moment was Forrest firing Lyndon. My favorite moment, my third favorite moment, was the moment after that, when Lyndon's about to leave and Stewart stops him and says, I want to make sure you heard what he said. He'll kill you. And I loved that because I hate whenever you have a TV show or a movie where a character's life is threatened, it's always done in a way where they mince words, right? Like, you better do what I asked or I'll know about it. That's basically what Forrest says. Stewart will not mince words. He'll tell you straight up. And I love the relationship between Stewart and Lyndon. I love that moment. It just made me want to give Stewart a big hug, and I want him to be my friend.
Yeah, I want to do that anyway.
And actually, good news if you enjoyed Stewart. Oh, here we go. Rustomir says, I want the spinoff to be Stewart's Playlist. Even if it's just a documentary-style reality show where he just introduces you to different poems or music. Here's one of my favorites from way back. We're going to play...
I've never been that into poetry, but like when I heard him doing it in that area, he's like, I like the acoustics here.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to hear the rest of that.
I love that he just ends up hanging out in that space because first when Stewart's walking by, he's reciting that poem. And it didn't even occur to me when we hear him saying the poem, it didn't occur to me that he's actually standing in a hallway somewhere just reciting the poem.
Yeah.
Then Forrest walks by. Later, Katie walks by. You don't even see it, but she's like, yeah, I saw Stewart talking about Shakespeare. So he's still there.
He's doing his usual thing.
And then even later, when Lily shows up, and we know that's much later in the evening, he's still just standing there. Yeah. I love that.
He's kind of like it's like in a video game when you just have your follower and you're like, wait here.
Yeah. All right, moment number 2. We're getting close to our number 1 moment. So moment number 2 is episode 2, the opening moments of the episode when we get the reveal. When you see the static on the screen and you can't wait. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat. What are they going to show us? And then I see, is that an arm? Holy crap, is that that's Jesus on a cross. Yeah. It was mind-blowing. The music was incredible. And like I've said so many times, every time I watch that screen, even in the last episode when I see the cavemen, like, that's so cool. We're actually seeing real cavemen. That's what they looked like.
Yeah.
It feels real.
Yeah, it feels like they actually got that footage. That was just so awesome to see.
Yeah,
that cavewoman had really nice eyebrows, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that.
I could relate
did notice that. I just assumed people would be dirtier back then.
I did one of those genetic tests, and I think all of us are actually slightly more percent Neanderthal than the average person. Right. I'm not even joking, so that might be why you like it.
Huh. Is that a good thing or bad thing?
There's some theories that Neanderthals are actually smarter than we think.
They had bigger
smarter
brains,
than humans.
right?
Yeah, I think they believe archaeologically that they had bigger brains than humans. Yeah, we just may have been physically more
pretty
tougher.
Smart guys here.
Yeah.
Right.
With some nice eyebrows.
Well, so all those folks that used to call me a 5-head, now they look pretty dumb, don't they? Before we get to moment number 1, Adam, let me ask you, did you have a favorite moment? Or before you tell us your absolute favorite, if you have one, what were some of your favorite moments?
I thought the car accident was very well done. Mm-hmm. I liked that we saw it from 2 different sides too. So not only did we just see how out of nowhere and how all the reasons that Forrest would have felt guilty for what happened, we also then, like, I don't know if it was later that episode or another episode, we see his wife's side where she's actually saying, I don't like talking on the phone while I drive. Bam.
Right. And that changed the scene a little bit too, right? Because the first time you see it, I made the connection the first time I saw it that he feels guilty, not just because he couldn't do anything to save her, but that by distracting her, he may have caused it or did cause it. Right. Then seeing it from the other side, it really drives it home when she's literally saying, I don't want to talk about this right now.
Yeah. And that's like that scene where he's kidding. He's like, or we could talk about it now. He's just kind of kidding around.
Right.
And that's probably the last time we ever see him joke around again.
Not true.
Really?
Well, we don't see him joke around, but we have it on good authority. He does make a joke.
What was the joke again?
Is Katie says, later today we watch dinosaurs, and then you say,
right.
Jurassic Park is better.
Why don't they show us the dinosaurs? I want to see them.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but this show's got to...
Jurassic Park is better.
Yeah, there you go. The show's got a budget, right?
Yeah. And to Ms. Cybervamp, yes, we are all brothers. This is a family business here.
That's right. We're brothers. We've got one of our brothers off to the side here.
Yo.
Our tech guy. And actually, our dad is right off camera over there, just being supportive, hanging out.
He's waving.
And there are more brothers, actually, more siblings out there. I'm not going to tell you how many. Let's just leave it a mystery. But I'll say you haven't seen everybody yet.
That's right.
And C-Bud or Kyle Cox says Lily's car accident was really cool, too. And the moment when that car goes by and she just barely misses her, incredible. They're really good at doing that trick in this show.
Just like in The Matrix when Neo is avoiding that train on the tracks.
Right, right.
I really like, I don't think they do this for that car accident, but for Forrest, where they then also show him standing in all the different places and all the different things that could happen, all the different cars going in different directions. The ways that they just superimpose people's movement and video, they do it for a lot of different flashbacks too, like Katie storming out of that lecture very obnoxiously.
Later dweebs.
yeah, exactly. It was funny, but she's like that person in your class where you just roll your eyes whenever they start talking.
I didn't have a person like that in my class. Then you must have been that person.
But that effect was really cool. The way that they can visually represent all these strange physical concepts is neat.
Yeah, and I think that's when the show is at its best, when it can take these big sci-fi philosophical concepts, but also hit you with something emotional. I think that's when it's at its best. So before we go to our number 1 favorite moment, we're going to do 2 things.
Okay.
One, we're going to remind you again, if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon. Adam here, not much makes him smile, and I got to see that smile on his face. If you hit the bell icon, he'll smile. So there you go.
And we're going to wait here until we hit 600. We're at 596 right now, so we need 4. Come on.
All right, waiting.
Give us reason to celebrate. I promise it won't just turn to static when that happens.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll still be here.
If you want to save reality itself, that's the only way to do it. Well, before we go to moment number 1, though, our favorite moment, let's talk about some honorable mentions. So a few of these have already come up in the chat. Lyndon standing on the edge and then falling many times over. That was a great scene. I think the only thing that stopped me from putting it on the top 5 was the fact that there was that slight detraction where I didn't quite get there from an emotional standpoint where I bought that Lyndon would do that.
Right. You wanted to see a little bit more of Lyndon's decline leading up to it.
Exactly.
And I'm getting word from Alun that these subscribers are coming along, so we're getting close, guys.
We need one more.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Guys and gals, give us one more subscriber. We're not begging. We're just recommending.
Yeah. No, it's for your sake.
Miss Cybervamp says I better go get all my side accounts. I'm not telling you not to do that.
Yeah.
I'm
also not telling you that if you go into like an Apple store or something, you can get on all those iPhones and try to do it too.
Kyle Cox says you guys have the quality to deserve at least 100,000 subscribers. Keep up the great work. Wow. Thank you so much. I mean, you can tell we're having a great time doing this, especially now when we're locked inside. We can't leave the house. We can't invite our friends over to watch devs. Not that I don't think I have any friends who watch this show. I think it's kind of skidding under the radar.
You all are the only friends we know who watch devs.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't be surprised if for a lot of you didn't know many people in real life who watch it either. So it's fun to have this watch party. I'm really enjoying
what we're saying. We're bringing people together.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. Anyway, one other honorable mention, the moment where Stewart puts on the 1 second projection.
That was okay. Yeah, I loved that scene.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So we have it's a little bit of a divisive scene. So, Alun.
Yo.
If you, boom, 601. Round of applause for everyone. Thank you. You guys are all awesome. Alun, the moment where Stewart does the 1 second projection.
Yeah.
You prevented me from putting that in the top 5. So I want to hear.
Okay. It could have been in the top 5. They made a few modifications to that scene, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I felt 1 second was too much. It's enough time to see what you're going to say or do and change it. Especially if you're saying like a full sentence or a full reaction, like, what the, I'm like, you can prevent that. If he made it like, maybe like a third of a second or something like that, it would be more believable.
But can you prevent it? Because the machine is showing you what you're going to do.
Well, that's the other question. But then it's like, if you can't prevent it, then in your head, are you trying to? And you just can't stop your mouth and your body from
I think what Alun's
actions?
Getting at is that it feels a little bit like a cheat by Alex Garland to not answer the question of the crossed arms experiment.
Yeah.
Because if they had said a 5 second projection, then it would be obvious that if you saw yourself doing something in 5 seconds, you would feel like you could just not do that thing, and then what would happen? Choosing 1 second, it's kind of on the edge there, where maybe you'd have enough time, maybe you wouldn't. For Lund, it feels like you definitely would. And
but here's what would happen. Okay, if you put on the 5 second projection, this is what would happen if Lund were watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. But he would see himself doing that before he did it, right? And then you'd say, okay, fine. Instead, I'm going to do something. But then it's like you're competing with something that already has been shown to you. I mean,
but
there's no sense trying to explain
5 seconds enough to not do it?
No, there's no amount that's enough.
So what's happening in your brain? Are you thinking, I want to do something different, but I can't?
Well, it's like if you push a ball from the top of the hill, and then I show you before it even gets to the bottom where it lands.
I love how
I understand the analogy, but pushing something is much different than you controlling your body.
Or is it? Because it's all just electrical activity that in theory is predictable.
What's in your head, though?
Am I crazy, or is Adam arguing against himself? Because earlier in the video, weren't you saying that?
I don't know.
I feel like I just went to another tram line.
Here's the thing. That machine, it's a computer. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros, or qubits, which I think is a little bit different, but essentially the same kind of thing, right? Your neurons are also just a bunch of ones and zeros. They can either be active or inactive. Mm-hmm. Every neuron is just connected to thousands and thousands of other neurons. It's all just a bunch of switches that affect each other. On, off, on, off, on, off. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference? Right? Is there magic there? Like Forrest
are we magicians?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I actually think we are. But I'm getting into the spirit of the show. It's like on a physical level, it's all just on-off switches.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
All right, we solved it.
I get what you're saying.
I'm not mad, by the way. I don't know if I sound mad.
All right.
I'm furious.
Remember earlier when I said that the best part of something is the anticipation.
Yes.
So we're building the anticipation to the number one moment. And to build the anticipation a little bit further, let's go to the chat here and see what people have been saying. Austin says, did you guys cover Aaron Paul's drug scene on this channel? I need to go watch your hilarious take on that. And actually, contrary to our channel One Take, we covered it twice. So we had our right after that episode of Westworld aired, we did a quick video on it. Then we did another one later in the week, so we did talk about that. Loudpack says, one of my favorite episodes, and now we're back on devs, is episode 5, where they first used the many worlds effect and basically explained the Lily, Sergey, and Jamie relationship.
Yeah, that was cool, and it was like it kind of hits you a little bit to think about how you can occupy this part of a relationship for a certain amount of time, and that someone one day might be there in your place. Like,
right.
That's kind of what I was saying about Jamie being sympathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vanessa Melendez says, Instagram, please. Tech guy, Alun. We need an Instagram.
Yeah.
Stat.
Wait, what? What do you want me to do?
We'll take care of it after. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh, an Instagram. We have an Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
What is it?
I posted like 6 images to it when we
All right,
started like 10 months ago.
Can you get our handle?
That's back when we did Attack on Titan.
Okay, we need to resurrect our Instagram.
Can you
We're
get our
working on
handle
that.
so we can announce it?
Yeah, it's probably One Take Vids.
Okay.
I'll confirm it.
Okay, all right. We'll throw it in the chat once we figure out what it is. Okay, let's go. Should we go to number 1?
Number 1 scene.
Okay, my at least my personal favorite moment in this show so far, it could change tonight, and Alun's favorite moment. It was unanimous between the two of us. And I saw at least one person in the chat already guess it. Forrest witnessing the car accident and then seeing the many worlds impact, where you see all the different versions of how the accident could have played out.
So I called it.
You called it, yeah.
Nice.
It was just to me, it was the perfect intersection of, like I said before, sci-fi, philosophy, and true emotion. Nick Offerman played that scene so incredibly well. And that's a scene that's tragic no matter how you play it. You have a father witness the death of his daughter. That's awful. You have him screaming, no, over and over. And his reaction was not totally predictable. You could easily say, just scream at the top of your lungs and be upset. But he played it in such a slightly strange way. He says, no, and then kind of walks towards it, because you can tell he doesn't want to see it. He doesn't want to see. It's almost like Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
Once he sees it, it's real. So you wonder, why isn't he just running to the car? And I think he's hesitating because once he sees his daughter there, there's no turning back. She's now dead. That knowledge is in his mind. His life is essentially over.
Well, remember very early in episode 2, when he's telling Lily how he felt about the death of his daughter, which is it's kind of sociopathic, because he knows he's responsible for Sergei's death.
Right.
He's saying it's like it's like I'm holding 2 different worlds in my head. One in which she's gone, she was taken from me, and one in which it's like she's still here somehow, or like there's some way to keep her. And so in his, like, I think that's part of the struggle he's going through, is that he holds these 2 contradictory ideas at the same time. Right.
And speaking of 2 ideas and things overlapping, how do you take that scene and crank up the tragedy? Well, you take that scene and you superimpose other realities to show how unlucky this Forrest is to live in what seems to be the one reality where the accident goes this way. You see one reality where they get home and everyone's happy. You see another where the SUV crashes into the car but keeps driving away. You see plenty of other realities on top of this one tragic one. So for me, there was no contest. I loved that scene. It was incredible. They even went back to it a couple of times, but I think they still kept it important enough where they didn't overdo it.
Agreed.
So I love that scene. Such an important moment for Forrest. And it's one that will just be in my head. I'll think about it, it's forever. It's burned in my memory. It was so well done.
Yeah, and this, I think the series, I haven't really watched much of Nick Offerman's stuff since Parks and Rec, but I would say for me, this is kind of, it's a symptom that he did a very good job in this, because I will not just jump right to Parks and Rec when I think about that actor anymore.
No, exactly. And when I see him, he so quickly disappeared into the role.
Mhm.
A lot of times, if you take a big actor, I'll get distracted, at least for a little bit, and need to sort of recalibrate. Okay, it's not Tom Hanks, that's Mr. Rogers.
Right.
You know, but for Nick Offerman, and part of it's because they changed his hairstyle, he had the beard and everything, but he completely embodied that role. Incredible. A couple other comments in the chat. C. Bud says, do y'all recommend Westworld? And I think a couple of other people already responded to that, but season 1 was great. Season 2 was pretty messy. Season 3 started really strong. Now it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So do with that what you will.
No. Watch Westworld and then watch Gil's reviews of Westworld.
Oh, there you go. Or just listen to the reviews. You know, it's fine.
I mean, we'll be honest. You should watch them. I'm saying we'll be honest about our opinions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. C. Bud says it's funny how often comedic actors pull off dramatic role transitions. I think there is a lot of truth in that. And someone who's realized that is Vince Gilligan.
Definitely.
Peter Gould. So Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul oftentimes used comedic actors to great effect. Better Call Saul stars Bob Odenkirk. And I think part of it comes from the fact that when you're doing comedy, you have the opportunity to be unsubtle. You can go big. And that means when you're playing drama, I think you're a little bit more comfortable expressing yourself a little bit more.
You can let go more, right? You're less constrained. And just to the same point, not only is Bob Odenkirk the star of Better Call Saul, and he's been a comedic actor forever, Bryan Cranston, also comedic actor, star of Breaking Bad, by the end of the show completely transformed into, you would never guess that he was a comedic actor before this.
Right, exactly. So I think it's a good point there. Austin brings up Robin Williams, brings up Will Ferrell in Stranger Than Fiction.
Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems.
Exactly. Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems and what's the Punch Drunk Love. He's another one where he can pull off an Oscar-worthy performance, but he just likes doing comedies, I think, hanging out with his buddies, you know? We're down to like 7 minutes until the premiere of the finale of DEVS. I think we got to throw that countdown up.
It's up.
Oh, it's up. Okay.
Great.
We'll leave the countdown up.
Yeah.
Until showtime, I think. I don't know, Adam. What else do you want to talk about? I mean,
I want it would be so cool and so ambitious if this show went into universe-altering, a universe-altering ending. Something that completely causes some metaphysical shift for the entire universe, something that ends the universe or collapses it, or something that somehow births a new universe full of possibility. I actually think that's more likely than the other ideas I came up with.
So, do you think, are we going to get a happy ending, a depressing ending, or something in between?
Something in between. Yeah.
I think it's going to lean towards the dark side of things. Though the one comment in the chat where apparently Alex Garland said the show is about love gives me some small hope. Do you think Lily makes it out of this alive?
Remains to be seen. Maybe they might show us that you guys know about Schrodinger's cat. It's basically an analogy to explain the idea of a superposition or of this uncertainty in quantum physics. So and that's basically the quantum immortality thing, right? So if the many worlds interpretation is true, there's one world in which Lyndon is now still alive, and there's many in which he's alive, there's many in which he's dead from that fall. Similarly, we might just see a split universe. If the show decides, yes, the many worlds interpretation is true, then we kind of don't have to worry about whether she makes it out or not.
Right.
If the show gives us reasons to believe that it's not true, well, then we have to worry.
Right. And that's one prediction I've had for a few episodes now. Whatever happens in the end, I have a feeling at some point where it's going to be ambiguous over what universe we're actually seeing, or we're going to unambiguously see multiple universes. Whatever the case, I know we've had hints at seeing many worlds where you see many possibilities superimposed over each other, but I don't think we've had a moment where you truly just spend time in an alternate reality. And I have a feeling we may get a taste of that in tonight's episode.
Right. Here's a theory. So I've thought a lot about this quantum immortality thing before, and I thought of a trick you could do, which is basically you decide I will, if this lottery ticket that I buy is not a win, in every situation where this lottery ticket is a losing lottery ticket, I will kill myself, which means you will only live to see the world in which you won the lottery.
Right.
You could, so basically every time you do some kind of quantum immortality test or where you push reality, you end up with a more and more improbable world. So you can basically keep pushing reality to its limits until you're living in worlds that should have never really happened.
Right.
Or are very, very unlikely.
Well, that's very close to what Lyndon was trying to do. He basically said, I will only die in the realities where I don't go on to work at DEVS.
Exactly. And so what if this, let's say this show actually exists in a sense in Lily's universe specifically, her tunnel of reality, then it's possible that the reason we see the static is because she does something that should have killed her, but it didn't. And it was so improbable that the machine couldn't predict it.
Right.
But we're in her reality, which means the machine is trying to deal with whatever it is that does happen.
Right, right. Okay, well, I mean, there's only 4 minutes to go, and we need to get upstairs.
That's right.
The Apple TV is sometimes a little finicky, so it could take us a couple minutes to get Hulu brought up, and then you've got to scroll through, and you got to find devs. So we got to bake in a little bit of time so we can start this right at 12:01.
That's right.
So I think we're starting to wrap up here.
I think we are. Yeah. people need to get to the show.
Exactly. So I just wanted to tell everybody, quick reminder that right after the show, probably about 15 to 20 minutes after, we're going to get back online. So once again, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you check off that bell icon so when we go live, it'll notify you and you can be part of that conversation where we try to make sense of what we just saw.
Yeah, and seriously, everyone, thanks for joining us. This has been so much fun, and like I could hardly even remember that we're not allowed to leave the house. Really, it's just been a blast.
No, I love hype. I love getting hyped up for something. And if I try to call up my friends now and say, hey, can we talk about devs for 2 hours right before it airs? You know, they're going to tell me, get out of here, five-head. Callback. People love callbacks. So, guys, thank you. Guys and gals, thank you all for joining us here tonight. This has been a blast. I had a ton of fun, and now we're going to go watch devs. We'll be back online in about an hour, 20 minutes. And then we can break it down together. I know it's going to be kind of late for some people. So if you don't make it back online, have a good night. But check the video out tomorrow. A couple of days from now, we'll do a full deep dive scene-by-scene analysis. So again, make sure you're subscribed so you can keep up with all our continuing devs coverage.
That's right.
Anyway, take care, everybody. And hopefully the universe is still intact in about an hour. And we'll talk to you again then. Thanks for watching.